This is why President William Ruto's government is unhappy with the BBC documentary.
At 20 minutes past 2, they break through.
It is happening, guys! It is happening!
Just when Kenyans were beginning to file away the trauma of June 25th, 2024 into the dusty archives of national memory, the BBC decided to drop an atomic bomb disguised as a documentary.
More than 100,000 Kenyans hit the streets of Nairobi. Their aim? Occupy the parliament.
Released on April 28, 2025, the investigative piece didn't just rip the bandage off old wounds. It surgically exposed the rot beneath. The documentary meticulously pieced together videos, photos, and metadata to unmask the chilling truth behind the Gen Z protests and the deaths that occurred outside Parliament on that day.
And a person is dead. We'll find that guy, Ruto banatoka enda kimbia, run.
It fingered one John Kiboi of Central Police Station as the man who backed the fateful orders, leading to the execution-style killing of David Chege, whose life was ended by a bullet to the head. Moments later, as gunfire echoed through the streets, another young Kenyan, Erickson Mutisia, lay lifeless beside him. And just when you thought it couldn't get any grimmer, the documentary roped in the Kenya Defense Forces. Yes, the same KDF once hailed as heroes for hitting the streets that fateful night, linking them to the killing of one protester, Eric Shieni. No sooner had the documentary hit the airwaves than President Ruto's administration hit back, unleashing a full-blown online assault. BBC journalists were painted as agents of chaos, activists were branded enemies of the state, and poor Babu Owino, the lone MP who dared appear in the film, became a political roadkill. With hashtags like BBC for Chaos, they launched every missile in their arsenal, from crude memes to high-octane insults, hoping to drown out the documentary's grim revelations.
We are not scared at all. This is Kenya. We are one.
But why the sheer panic? Why the frothing outrage? Well, the answer is simple: the timing of the documentary. You see, this documentary didn't just fall from the sky. It landed precisely 1 month before the first anniversary of the June 25th protest, a date already simmering with potential for fresh political eruptions.
Ruto must go!
It also collided perfectly with the government's sensitive schedule, the looming presentation of the 2025 finance bill, the same finance bill that sparked last year's seismic protests and nearly sent President Ruto packing.
At least 3 young men were killed at Kenya's parliament: David Chege, Erickson Mutisia, and Eric Shieni.
To the BBC, this was pure journalism. To President Ruto's camp, it was a flaming match hovering dangerously close to a powder keg.
Ayes 195, nays 106. The ayes have it.
You see, in Kenya, the finance bill season is an anxious period. It is when citizens already reeling from the cost of living sharpen their voices and sometimes their placards. After the blood-soaked memories resurfaced through the BBC's storytelling, the government wasn't taking any chances. The fear was palpable. Kenyans, freshly reminded of last year's bloodshed thanks to BBC's high-definition expose, might not just tweet angrily. They might once again take to the streets.
Hey, niaje? Iza, mina homa kiasi. Wale majama waliandika ile bill tulikataa wanaitanga a cold. Ikulu pia nasikia tumeingiza baridi na ile poem ya last. Kimya kingi, njeve shadidi. Kimya kingi, wanauaga, wanasaga meno. Baridi shadidi. Juu ya Kaluma tumeongeza Piriton. Watalala. Na wakilala, wakiamka, blanketi zao watapata tunafanyia Soma State House Road. Kimya kingi, Njeve shadidi. Kimya kingi. Baridi zaidi.
Evidence of the administration's terror was splattered all over Twitter with a state-sanctioned hashtag BBC for chaos, as government bloggers threw every insult they could muster at the BBC. But the documentary didn't just ruffle feathers, it stripped them off.
Let's start from there. Police are allowed to use lethal force to kill, depending on the circumstances. The fact that somebody has been shot is not conclusive evidence that they have been shot by a police officer.
Remember what the former CS of Interior Kithure Kindiki insisted that no police officers could be directly linked to the killings?
It's not conclusive. Maybe there's a presumption that that bullet is the bullet of a police officer, but as a person who has practiced law for a quarter of a century, I can say this without fear of contradiction. The fact that somebody has died through a bullet where police officers were trying to control a crowd is not conclusive proof that that person has been killed by a police officer.
Well, the BBC, armed with metadata and video evidence, turned the claim into Swiss cheese. It showed uniformed officers not only firing live rounds, but methodically executing unarmed protesters, while the government tried to recast them as dangerous criminals in an elaborate blame game.
We realized the GNC withdrew from the protest. Yeah. Because the GNC themselves saw their life was in danger. The team that infiltrated, and this I have to tell it to the people of Kenya, were people who were under the influence of drugs. They were given, they were intoxicated.
How do you tell that?
They were intoxicated. You can tell that from the behavior in comparison to the GNCs. I'm trying to compare two sets of people.
What were they doing?
So the GNCs usually were protesting. They were carrying banners. So these are people who were carrying. These was people who were carrying crude weapons, and they had a specific target. The GNCs had no specific targets. No particular. They had no problem with the Supreme Court.
It is possible that the criminals who rained terror on innocent people and attempted to challenge our law enforcement deployments are still determined to continue with their dangerous behavior. I hereby put on notice the planners, financiers, orchestrators, and abettors of violence and anarchy that the security infrastructure established to protect our republic and its sovereignty will be deployed to secure the country and restore normalcy.
As if the situation wasn't embarrassing enough, the documentary highlighted that no single police officer has been prosecuted for the killings. When the BBC pressed the National Police Service for answers, they passed the hot potato to the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, claiming they couldn't investigate themselves without formal evidence. The KDF also pulled the same move, stating they were simply supporting the police. And by the way, they claim nobody had officially asked them to investigate anything either. So, while the BBC insists this was journalism at its finest, President Ruto's government sees a ticking time bomb that could once again turn Gen Z outrage into a full-blown revolution. And if that happens, you can bet the government will be looking for someone to blame. And right now, that someone's logo has 3 little letters: BBC.